Hi there, listeners.
Today we're brought to you by Yokkao, the world's most prolific Muay Thai brand.
That's right. We're so excited to be teamed up with Yokkao to bring you the best Muay Thai gear.
Honestly, mate, as a coach, it took me a long time to find pads that don't wear down after a few months, but my Yokkaos are staying strong.
It's the worst when you get kicked in the forearms with bad pads.
Yeah, it is the worst, especially when you have to do it every day.
If there's one thing you should never compromise on with martial arts, it's the gear that keeps you safe.
100%, mate. And Yokkao has the absolute best quality of training gear, gloves, shorts, and clothes as well.
Not only that, it's the best value for the quality of the equipment too.
Also, Yokkao are offering you 10% off any purchase by using code CombatCasuals10 at the checkout.
That's Combat Casuals 10 with no spaces.
Get yourself some top quality Muay Thai gear and save some cash. Hello, listeners. Before we get started today, I just want to do a big shout out for one of our sponsors, Power Body Nutrition. They sell all kinds of sports supplements, vitamins and minerals and health foods. If there is anything you need and you don't want to spend too much getting it, you can visit powerbody.co.uk. Alternatively, if you have your own health store or pharmacy or gym and you want to stock up, you can visit the wholesale site powerbody.eu. Ian, I'm not sure if you've used Powerbody before, but good stuff.
I have used it before. It's a great website, really easy to use with lots of products on there. And it gets even better if you use it through us because we have a great discount code too.
Oh, yeah. What's the discount code, Ian?
What is our discount code, Justin?
Fuck's sake. It's Combat Casuals 10. All one word and the number 10. Combat
there you go.
10.
It's Combat Casuals 10. That's my answer to your previous question.
Lovely. Cool. Right, let's do it. Let's get on with the podcast. Hello and welcome to the Combat Casuals podcast.
If you're a fan of mixed martial arts and all things related, stick around.
We'll be talking everything from past and future events
to harnessing your inner chi and everything in between.
We want to provide you with the opportunity to get involved in the ultimate fighting conversation.
We've been friends for too long now,
and we always have strange conversations.
So we thought, hey, why not make a podcast?
I'm Dustin.
I'm Ian.
And we're the Combat Casuals.
She's an author. And she had Robin Black on Twitter. She changed it to something else, but it used to say Robin Black, and then in brackets it said, "Not the MMA guy, dash. He seems nice though."
Really?
That's literally, yeah, that's what it said. I was like, wow, what a nice, this Robin Black is really nice. It literally said, "Not the MMA guy, dash. He seems nice though."
Yeah. Like, did you message her? Did you speak to her?
Mm-hmm. I did. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry that you get weird people like telling you don't know anything about martial arts or they're getting mad because McGregor did something or whatever. She said, yeah, I do get some weird people, so,
I mean, they're not wrong. I mean, she probably doesn't know very much about martial arts.
Yeah, true. She probably did. I guarantee that she doesn't. But, yeah,
It's great. But honestly, we're very thankful for you being here, Robin. It means a lot for us to be on the podcast.
Super into it. No, it'll be fun.
Yeah, I strongly assume that all or most of our listeners will know who Robin Black is, but anyone who doesn't, he is one of the funniest and the greatest MMA and martial arts analysts you will be able to find anywhere on the internet.
Yeah, totally.
If you don't already, give him a follow on Instagram, Robin Black Martial Arts, all one word.
Yeah.
You will enjoy yourself, the Bink Master.
It's interesting, like, I don't think I ever set out, well, I shouldn't say that, but certainly at the beginning, I didn't set out to make people laugh. Although that is something that it ended up happening. I guess once you start breaking down bugs and, and people like falling off things, people are going to laugh. But somewhere along the process, I was looking at it and thinking, okay, I'm really into this. I'm obsessively curious about how things work with the human body. I went to university, I studied, pre-kinesiology for a year, and then I dropped out because I was like, I hate university. I was a martial artist growing up as a child since I was 7. I was a gymnast as a little kid. I was a high platform diver. So physically, I've always been into it, but more than my own physical, I'm just curious. I figure out the world by figuring out how people work. So I'm super into it. And then along the way, I was like, okay, I'm going to make thousands and thousands of these, and I have, and I will continue to, because this is what I do. Some of them, maybe sometimes it'll be poetic, and sometimes it'll be beautiful, and maybe sometimes it could be funny, and maybe sometimes it can be philosophical, and maybe sometimes I can compare it to chili, and and that's the nature of doing it. To me, of doing anything creative is like just doing it a lot of different ways and looking at the same thing from as many ways as possible. You know, and my own interest, like I think the idea of formulas is just something I'm super like naturally opposed to. I just the hair on the back of my neck stand up. So doing something the same way all the time bothers me. But yeah, all of a sudden I'm funny. It's really weird.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't trying to be funny, and then one day I was kind of funny too. So
That's the best way,
all
man. No one likes to try hard. That's the best way.
Exactly. Exactly.
So my first question absolutely has to be, Robin, why Bink? Where did Bink come from? That's your signature. Why? Is that something you used to say before this, or?
Yeah, kind of. Like I was sort of, like that's sort of a sound effect for the world. Like it was for me a lot. And people always ask me, like, so people who do consume my stuff, if they consume 20 or 30 of them, at some point you've come across the name Steve also. And somebody's like, man, I'll call the guy who loses, like, long pants Steve, or weird face Steve, or like milk truck Steve, or whatever. And people will be like, wow, you must have really, someone named Steve must have really screwed you. Right? But it's the same thing as Bink. It was just like, I always just called everybody Steve. It was weird. Like, so, and I always did it. So I've been married almost 10 years, and I was with my wife for 3. So we've been best friends and like, partners and like each other's favorite person, or at least she's my favorite person, for like 13 years. And so she would laugh whenever I'd be like, let's say you get onto a streetcar and the streetcar driver was rude or tall or different, remarkable in some way. I'd be like, what's up with bus driver Steve? Like Steve was the name. So then when people started getting knocked out, they were Steve.
He's just your average guy. He's
just
your average guy. Your average Steve.
It's funny because our only listener that we talk about we call him Steve. He is Steve. So
of course he's Steve.
Strange.
Of course he's Steve.
What a strange coincidence.
He is. Yeah, Steve. Of course he's Steve. And there's a guy on Twitter whose name was Steve. There's a few Steves on Twitter, and I don't hate Steves. I love Steves. So Stephen Thompson. I love Stephen Thompson.
Yeah,
my brother's name is Stephen, for crying out loud. Like, like. I like Steve's. I say their name because it's interesting, but and in tribute. But one guy on Twitter was like, "Hey, man, like, you don't have to be rude to Steve's." And I was like, "Well, you're good. You're good, Steve." And now his Twitter handle is Good Steve, right?
I love it.
Good Steve. Bink is the same. That was kind of a sound effect for the world. I didn't invent it, but I started using it, and I started doing it. Like I'm not a contrarian, but I really get bored of things easy, and I really need innovation, different, old, rediscovering old things, trying to find new things, trying to do it. That's just who I always have been. And I don't like I get bothered when somebody, there's going to be a rematch. Let's say the 3 of us are hanging out. We're talking about rematches. And one of you guys, I'm going to hate you as soon as you go, we got to run it back. I'm like, shut up. Like, you don't have to say that. Just because everybody, but you watch on TV, they'll be like, oh, we're going to run it back. The guy will get in the cage, go, we got to run this back. And the commentator will go, we've got to run. It's like, we don't all have to say the same things over and over. Some people find comfort in it. I find extreme discomfort in it. So striker versus grappler in a stylistic matchup. You can't, to me, how could anyone say that? It's a waste of sentences because you've heard it. I'll see in quotes, people will be like, this fighter is fighting. And I asked her about it and she said, quote, fireworks. It's like, of course she did, because people have been saying fireworks. This fight's going to be fireworks, fight of the night potential. They've been saying that for 20 years, right? To me, that makes me uncomfortable. I couldn't yell either, stop the steal or lock her up or whatever, like whatever the sayings are. But there's a certain amount of the world who finds comfort in saying the same things over and over again and repeating this stuff, But this is, and so Bink everybody for a while, and people I admire and people who do great work,
Mm.
but people were yelling, "Boom! Oh my God, this is all over! Oh my God, that's a huge right hand!" Everybody was doing it, and I was like, "How can anybody think?" And I'm not trying to judge anyone or be rude to anyone, but in my mind, I'd be like, if I said anything right now except for a huge right hand, oh my God, it's over. Any other sentences in the world will be more interesting than that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
at that time, everybody was screaming, boom, oh my God. And I just started doing what I do, which is kind of not that. So I'd go, bink, boop,
It's perfect.
bink. And
because
It is perfect.
it makes so light of the situation. That's why it's so funny. It's obviously someone gets hit with an enormous shot and bink, it's such a like a delicate
It is, and I think it's also like when I watch it kind of links back to what you were saying before with your videos. Sometimes you do get the humor from them, and sometimes you get the more, you know, the more beautiful aspect of fighting of it. And sometimes when you see the slower and you just say bink, it's like, yeah, that it does look fantastic just with the slow-mo and you going bink to that strike particularly.
There's something poetic about that. And you know, I didn't think that was going to be a thing. Like after I said it 7,000 times, and I was working with like, you know, different people. Somebody was like, "You should trademark that." Here's an email, and they introduced me to a trademark lawyer, and he was like, "You should absolutely trademark that." And I said, "Well, I didn't invent the word." He goes, "Nobody invents any word." It's like, bink isn't there for you. The way trademarks work is, it's intended to protect the audience from confusion. And he said, by all means at this point, because my videos have been viewed 1 billion times, literally over 1 billion times, he's like, there is an assumption that that members of the audience know bink is associated with you. So the reason you trademark that is to protect the audience from confusion. And I was like, well, I don't, you know, be that as it may, it's just super cool to trademark bink. Like, you know, I just started saying it one day, and you know, 6, 7 years later, and 2,000 videos later, all of a sudden, it's like, you know, it's associated with me, which is really neat. Like I never said I would do that. Yeah, I never. And then a friend of mine was saying, we're talking about it the same way you guys just said, where in slow motion you're throwing a punch and you say bink, and he said, a good friend of mine, a martial artist, he was like, the reason it works for you is like you're so clearly obsessively like admiring of the whole process, including the winning and the losing, that when you do it, it's not mockery. And I was like, wow, like I never thought of that, but it's true. It totally I'm clearly not mocking anyone. Nobody loves fucking fighting more than me. Right? So like,
it's so true. That is so true. Like when it's got, as I was saying before, it is that sort of like the slow-mo of it with that almost softness of how you're explaining what we're seeing. It adds, as you said, a poetry to the motion that we're seeing in front of us. And sometimes, not that I dislike any other commentary, you know, commentary across the board is different where you go. But when you have those more excited, as you say, oh my God, it's all over, you sometimes get lost in the moment of what you're seeing, that poetry and motion of the martial arts that you're seeing. So I think your slow motions, when you have that, it adds just a whole element to it. But I did have a question, if you didn't mind. It kind of links to this. But me and Dustin, I'm sure a lot of people wonder, do you pick the videos that you break down, or do you get them sent in, or is it a mixture of those two things? Like, is there an element of that?
It's a total mixture. Total mixture. It started out, so I started doing this in 2012, and I worked for a, you know, I started fighting, and I had my first fight in 2007. And I started doing martial arts in about 1979. I was born in 1969. I'm 52 years old. It's so weird. It's so weird to get old. Like time goes by and then you're older. But yeah, so terrifying. I've been curious about it, trying, you know, it's weird, right? But yeah, 2012 was when I started taking video and putting a zoom or an arrow or whatever. And honestly, so there was a couple of people that kind of did that. There was not in the same way, and I don't even know if anyone did video. There was a guy named Jack Slack who still does stuff. He was doing stuff with stills that I remember seeing, and Jack's great. And there was a guy or a woman, I don't know who the person was. They were called BJJ Scout, and they might have had video, but I don't know if they had voice or a person. when I started doing this thing, it didn't exist. And if it did, nobody's ever shown it to me, or I've never seen it. Pre-2012, somebody taking video. Back then, when people talked about fighting, literally they would be like, okay, let's put up the rankings and let's talk about what matchups. What does this mean for the division? That used to be the conversation. Not what happened or what is this or how did it work or what could happen.
Totally.
Who are these people? So it just didn't really exist, and it was super fun, and I was like super into it. And back then, it was the network I worked at in Canada. It was like a regular TV network. I just started saying, we're going to do this. And I started doing it with like whatever video we were legally able to use. So it was old Japanese video like Shudo and Pancrase. It's amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And we would do it. And then later I started kind of using UFC footage. I didn't know anything about like intellectual property or what you could and couldn't put on TV. And so at first I used whatever I could get. And it was video, and you needed editors. People didn't edit on their computers. There was no such thing. Like only a professional editor would do it. So somebody would help me. Then by about 20, maybe 15, the network got a small chunk of UFC footage. And then I started using, but it was only legally able to be shown in Canada, but we kind of showed some on YouTube too. That sort of, and again, then I would just pick whatever I liked. So I remember talking about Doo-Ho Choi before he was in the UFC, and we had all his footage from Japan. Yeah. He's from Korea, but he was fighting in Japan, so we did that. And when he was fighting in the UFC, I started using that because it made sense. And then so it would be whatever I wanted. But now I'll do 400-500 in a year. Like I'll do more than one a day now. I've done so many thousands that now I'll see something that I like and I'll grab it and I'll just sit down and start working on it. And my wife will look at me like, okay, well, the next 90 minutes, he's gone now. He's just fucking on some weird trip now. Other times people will pop up on the internet and say, hey, can you break this down? Like there's a Navy, I believe he's a Navy SEAL, or a Marine or something. What does it say here? Yeah, Marine Corps veteran ended an armed robbery at a gas station. Somebody just sent me that. So just before I started speaking to you guys, I was like breaking that down. But yeah, now 2016, that TV channel shut down. And shut down, the channel didn't shut, but they shut our content creation department, which in retrospect is probably not the greatest business idea, shutting down digital content in 2016. But, and with any business, it's not the business or the boss. There could be one individual who just doesn't understand, and that person could be a vice president of something. So that happened. I suddenly had no jobs. Literally, I had no work. That was 5 years ago. And somewhere in the process of that, I made 100 and then 500 and then 900. And then people started hiring me a little bit. Well, could you break down our fights? Glories this weekend. Could we pay you or send you some stuff or give you, a fee? And often my answer will be, yes, I would love to work with you. I need money to pay for goods and services. This is how our civilization works. However, can we make the deal where maybe you'll pay me less money than you might otherwise, but I'll get to pick whatever fights I want. I'll get to pick whatever moments I want. I'll get to tell whatever story I want about your main event or your fighters or your card or whatever. And so that's how I like to do it now. Artistically, it's super important to me to be able to try different things, even if they fail. And for me to get that right, or that privilege from you, my partner, you're going to do it if you pay less. And so somewhere in that thing, I still make myself a great living, but you might get it slightly cheaper than if you said, I need you to say striker versus grappler in a stylistic matchup. You're going to have to pay me twice as much to say that, because I'll feel like a jackass if I say that, right? I'll feel like a complete jackass if I say, this guy's got amazing wrestling, and this guy's got phenomenal takedown defense. But if he can just get it going, keep it on that front foot, back this guy up, use a lot of pressure, and really kind of defend those takedowns. This is, hey, this one's going to be fireworks. He's got fight in night potential all over. You want me to do that? You're going to have to pay me a shitload of money, because I feel like a jackass.
What fight are you talking about? That sounds brilliant.
I just hate that. There was actually a period about 3 or 4 years ago I looked at where I was and what I was doing and where it was going, where I wanted to go, telling stories about fighting and looking for philosophical truths about life in it and all the things I like to do. And I was like, wait a second, talking about fighting on the internet or television or commentating it or quote doing breakdowns, it's getting commodified to such a degree that what I just did there, anybody can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can do. So if you got a fighter who used to fight for a title or whatever, or he's got 600,000 Instagram followers, or he's incredibly handsome, or whatever, you can plug him in there or her in there, and they can do that job. So I'm going to lose the ability to do the thing I love if I don't change, because anybody can do what I just described. Oh, you can't take too many more of those leg kicks. They're going to start adding up. That's going to affect his mobility. You know what? Like, if you're just going to say the shit people say when the things happen at that time wearing a suit on a lit desk, you're not going to need me, and I'm going to lose the ability to do what I love. Yeah. And I recognize that very brightly, very obviously, like there was a bright light shining on that truth. And I thought, it will be better for me in the long run if I do it the way I want to do, which is different. It might be weird. Some people will hate it. Maybe it's outside of the accepted typical norm. But I think by 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, I will be rewarded by it. One, I'll get to still do it the way I want to. Two, I'll get to do it my way, which is maybe a little weird and maybe not everyone will like it. And three, I think I'll actually be more valuable to people who want me to do it. And it turned out I'm happy to say I was fairly correct on those things. I've got probably 4 times the work that I used to have, and I get to do it sort of my way, and I have fun doing it, and I'm passionate about it, and I'm learning new things, and so it sort of worked out. Doesn't always, but I'm sitting in kind of this nice little pocket right now where plans I made years ago brought me to a nice place. But then you have to sort of think about, what will this all look like in 3 years or 4 years or 5 years? And how do I make sure I'm not just a shitty imitation of myself or somebody else 2 years from now? And I think that's the path if you're going to be a songwriter or an actor or a shipbuilder or, make carpets or build create furniture or analyze martial arts. I think that's just how we have to think today.
Yeah, completely. Well, I was going to say that I think that's what a lot of people kind of lose sight of sometimes. That's what needs to be focused on when you are creating something like that. That you need to think of it as a process over time rather than instant gratification of that journey. And I think that sometimes is lost in it.
Yeah. What I was going to say.
It's one.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, please. No, please.
Oh, I was going to say. I think a big difference here, and what really proves that you were absolutely right, was there's a big difference between the commentators and analyses that we're given by whichever broadcast we're watching and the ones we actively seek and choose. The fact that you're obviously in a public domain like Instagram and you have the following that you do and the respect that you do, you're the guy that we actually seek out to get content from. Whereas, naming names, there are plenty of commentators and analyses out there that we're kind of forced upon, but I would never seek out actively on Instagram.
Yeah, totally. I think that's so true, because I remember when I first started watching your analysis more, it's kind of like that moment I was like, I'm going to seek this more and more, was when, and it's one of the best breakdowns like I've seen ever of the two fighters when they've been scheduled to fight so many times, and sadly we're never going to see it, of Tony versus Khabib, where you did this phenomenal breakdown of like how the two would interact with each other. And I now, to this day, am like, that's why I'm always going to seek out your breakdowns, because of that breakdown I saw of how you looked at those two. And it was such a detailed breakdown of their zones of like control. And I was like, that is an amazing breakdown that I've not seen anybody talk about.
Thank you. That one, so that era, that I was able to, so Joe Rogan is a friend and very much a mentor, and has been very incredibly generous with me. And he literally sent my stuff to Dana White, who, had me fly to Vegas and sat down and then said, we're going to hire you. We're going to move you and your wife to LA, and you're going to be doing all our pre and post shows. Now, his people didn't execute on any of that. And ultimately, like, that's not actually what happened. But that's what he and I were dancing around in his office I was demonstrating stuff, and he was stoked, and he was like, I need you to, the very first thing I did for them was break down Rhonda versus, um, what's her name from Albuquerque, Holly. And he said, yeah, Rogan, I love Rogan, he says. But, he said Ronda's going to crush Holly. And, I need you to take the other side. And I said, I think Holly's going to win. And not that predictions are stupid.
Yeah.
The fact that I happen to be correct is, a statistical, function, not a fact that you can see it. And
Yeah,
the fact
totally.
that sometimes, but I said, look, the game will be, everybody is talking about, defending the takedown against Ronda, defend the armbar. I said, the whole thing starts out in space. And this is now normal, but none of this conversation existed at that time. I said, when Ronda, the game is don't let Ronda grab you, because from there it gets worse. And that sounds easy, but it's actually a footwork game, and it's a range game. It's a game of distance. It's a game of, chest to chest is sort of a range 1, and then where I can throw a hook is 2, and where I can throw a long punch is 3, and where I can kick is 4. Outside of 4 is 5, where anything has to happen to get close enough to even grab me. We stay there, get her to chase, move away, and then in the gap, and you try to kick her in the head. And I did that, and he's like, great, do that. And I literally built that. And that's when the 4 ranges, I was started to sort of create this idea of the 4 ranges. Now, after working on it, and literally it's just dozens, hundreds of hours to do it. Sometime later, I was reading some old classic Tao of Jeet Kune Do stuff, and Bruce Lee had 4 ranges. So I didn't invent shit, right? I didn't innovate anything. But this is the nature of innovation, or the nature of trying to innovate. If you're correct, it already is truth. You're not going to invent some truth. It is either the truth or it isn't. So this just wasn't a thing. There was no, if you go back before that fight and you put on 50 UFC fights, there was not one single moment of discussion of range. It's so normal now that when somebody listens to this conversation, they'll be like, bullshit, bro. But you can go back and listen. It just didn't exist. It just wasn't in the modern conversation. And in fact, the reason that was brought up with Dana in his office that day was because Joe sent him me breaking down Conor McGregor, and I started using terms about managing distance management, range manipulation, mastering the space, all these things. Again, I didn't invent any of them. That's true. And it just wasn't something that existed in the corporate broadcast, so it didn't exist in the mind space. It didn't exist with the audience. So it didn't exist in conversation, but it was real. So all of that kind of happened around the same time. And then, although they couldn't, suddenly the conversation of we're moving you to LA and you're working on Fox became, well, can you build these breakdowns? We will pay you and the company you work for, and you can build them for us, which I did. But the amazing thing about that in retrospect, and it helped me a great deal, right, to the art, the developing as an artist and developing the ability to do something somewhat different, was I had a guy there that was my guy on the other end, really cool dude, Matt. And he would say, well, what do you need for Tony and Khabib? And I said, I need everything. So his everything was not just all of the fights and all the replays, but camera angles that were never broadcast.
Yeah.
So there would be these epic shots. The only problem is he would send me 26 hours of footage. And so my answer was, stay at the office when it's closed down and consume footage, make notes, time code it. So there would be a shot of, so the one shot that I remember in that Khabib versus Tony one is two overhead shots, really high raptor shots.
Yeah, they're the ones that stick in my mind too.
Yeah. Well, those weren't in any broadcast.
No.
Those were shots that I took that they were captured on their cameras. So those 20 hours, 30 hours, 50 hours, that cannot be recreated. So yes, it made a cool breakdown, which I'm super thankful for. And I'm thankful that you like it now, 6 years later or whenever it was, and you brought it up. But those hours are, the important thing isn't the product that was produced. The important thing is always the work. The product is incidental. The piece. Hey, look at this piece I made. It's Gastelum versus Weidman or whatever, right? Cool piece. the piece isn't the important part.
Yeah.
The process is the important part. The
Yeah.
process is what makes you in 2021 suddenly realize, oh, wait, I have a good career doing shit I like, just starting to reveal new ideas. I'm not imitating the language of people who do fighting commentary on TV. I'm trying to find my own. I'm trying to find my own perspective. And those hours of looking at these pieces of footage that nobody else saw, that didn't exist, and viewing things. When I looked at those Connor fights, one of the ones Joe sent to Dana originally, I had every angle of the same thing. Now that's much more normal today, but back then, 16 angles on McGregor throwing that punch, watching them over and over, and not just the broadcast, but these low angles and these red cameras and these slow motions and these overhead shots. Now all of a sudden, that's a style of learning that that is valuable to me to this day, that I use. And then when you understand how you learn, now I can understand how Khabib learns. Right?
Yeah.
Now I can understand how Canelo learns. What's Canelo's version of this process to be a fighter, where mine would be to be a storyteller or an analyst or somebody who edits a video. How does this process apply to Glover Teixeira at 42 years old? Why can Canelo improve even though most people plateau? What is he getting from his process of learning? So now you're not just learning about martial arts, but you're learning about learning. You're learning about development. You're learning about process. So, when you're obsessed with something, if you have the gift of figuring out what you love, and then the gift of being able to do it 10, 12 hours a day for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 60 years, this is your road to mastery. You can start to understand these things instead of just And when I say imitate Joe Rogan, Joe is, like I said, a friend and a mentor and a hero and somebody to look up to. But most commentary and analysis is some second, third, fourth generation of imitating that man. Who the point you're supposed to take from watching Joe Rogan is how amazing it is to be an individual.
Yes.
The reason he was great is because he's an individual. If you copy him, you're losing the original thing, which is individuality. So now the tone, the cadence, the rhythm, the oh my God, oh bro, I heard other commentators say to Rogan, this guy's no joke, bro. It's like, no joke isn't a martial arts term. It's a Roganism term about the way that this intelligent man sees the world. You're imitating that man that man on a broadcast where you copied that man, and none of that makes any fucking sense to me. I don't understand that. And the more you look at this, the more you see this controls the way we see politics and science and music and art and everything. People repeat each other, and they repeat memes, and and some people find extreme comfort in it. I'm not judging them. I'm just not one of them. I find extreme discomfort in it.
It's really interesting. Like that bit there where you talk about, we see more about like our society, I guess, and ourselves. I think that's what some people miss about what martial arts actually does provide, and I think that's something that I get a lot of the time from your analysis. That could be even Tony one was that one that really sparked that for me. But like, there's been myriads of them where you get to understand more about martial arts. As you said, I think there was an interview I saw with you where you were discussing like the idea that martial arts, you want to see it like a fine wine and have multiple different like martial arts to study and to look at and understand and appreciate, like somebody who enjoys wine would. And it's that sort of insight that I'm like, you get a bigger span and understand the whole tapestry of what martial arts, and then ourselves as well as a society more, because I think people don't realize that's what fighting actually does provide us with. But with that, do you find that, like, obviously you do a lot now with the karate combat, which is great, and like something that I've really gotten into since seeing it more on your page as well, and also now the bare knuckle MMA with Gamebred. Do you think that you find yourself wanting to do more and more of that sort of focus, less away from the traditional MMA sort of like commentary, or moving it towards more of that, let's find the more extreme versions of this that we're moving towards, what people want to find,
100%. That is over the last couple of years that's been the case, and the more of it I do, the more of it I want to do and kind of need to do. Like that's where all the information is.
Mhm.
This is counterintuitive, but the people who know the least about martial arts are the people who watch. And I analyze the UFC for the broadcast partner in Canada, TSN, and I do a ton of work for Bellator proudly, and I love it. But the people who know the least about martial arts are the people who are the heaviest consumers of the UFC or Bellator or One Championship.
Yeah.
And that's the truth.
It's weird you say that, because we went to a Bellator recently, and that crowd was people who didn't know what was going on.
But that crowd in that room who went because Bellator put on a cool show isn't even the one I'm talking about. It's the ones who do think they do know.
Yeah.
You do not learn about martial arts by watching the UFC or Bellator or One Championship, the mainstream. And I'm not judging any of those. Like I said, I am gainfully employed to promote them. And when I say these things, it's not meant to be critical. It's meant to be honest. It's meant to be truthful. They are Budweiser, right? They are Coca-Cola. They are McDonald's, and they set out to be that. So they aren't angry that they're that. The UFC wanted to be on ESPN. It wanted to be in every home. It wanted to be a mainstream sport. It believed to accomplish this, it had to appeal to the lowest common consumer. To do that, you have to somewhat disrespect your intelligent consumer, right? Your deepest consumer. This is the nature of it. I had conversations when I was in their orbit where I would literally be talking to a high up person. I'd say, listen, a part of what I think is a flaw, and I know I'm an individual on this, and you guys think I'm weird, but I think it is that our expectation of what is possible is infinitely too low. And they would say back to me, they're like, you don't understand. Like, we have all these casual audience that we have to appeal to. And I'm like, when you do that, you disrespect your actual audience, the obsessive, or you make them dumber. You make them less sophisticated. If they succumb to this, right? If they succumb to your packaging, to what you believe you need to do, Budweiser is not, very hoppy. It is not very sharp. It is not very weedy. It's not different, right? Why did all these people pop up and take a fascinating, deep interest in craft beer? Because the mainstream gave them watered down, mediocre beer that everyone's palate can handle, but nobody's enjoyed by. That's Bellator, the UFC, One Championship. That's HBO boxing. That's what that is, right? Yeah. So if you are somebody who who truly started at the beginning, you're when the people who say, man, I used to love the UFC, or I was an original person. Why did you like this thing? Well, it wasn't mainstream. It was an outsider thing. Yeah. It was innovative. Its language was different. The way it looked was different. The flavor was different. It was edgy. It was your family didn't like it. People thought you were crazy about that. All of that was true. None of that is true today, right? No, so there should have never been a position where BKFC should be able to suddenly have 100,000 subscribers on their app. There should have never been a position where all of a sudden these smaller shows can come along and there's a big audience for it. There should have never been room for any of this, but the room came because the audience that deeply likes the real people who you used wine, but you could say it about art, you could say it about music. The people who like to be pushed, the people who like to be provoked, the people who like different flavors and textures, the people who don't want to fall into the same. It doesn't matter which commentator you have. They're all going to be wearing a suit. They're all going to be lit here. They're all going to look at camera 2 at this exact time and say, we got an epic main event. Winner gets a title shot. They're going to say that. And then the camera shot when the guy walks out of the back is going to be exactly the same. When he gets into the cage, we're going to have the camera from the inside. That's a higher, edit, shot, lighting, graphics, rhythm, timing, words, language, all of it over and over, exactly the same, right? Yeah. When you do that for a long time, for too long, and all of a sudden people are like, hey, have you heard of Leth Way? There's headbutts in that. It's from Myanmar. Yeah. People are like, where the fuck is Myanmar? That sounds interesting, right? Or they're like, hey, did you... right?
Where is that?
What, headbutts? What do you mean headbutts? Right? Or somebody will be like, and that's like you mentioned karate combat, which I do love, absolutely love doing it. If you went 8, 9, 10, 12 years ago and you said, okay, I got this idea. We're going to turn try to find a way to structure sort of the root of karate, full contact karate. We're going to put it in a pit. And by the way, Boss Rutan's going to travel through time
Yeah.
as the story. People are like, what are you talking about? No, but now, because the thing is the same week after week, you know, oh, he's got to find some traditions, you know, some transitions. He's got to keep his head off the line. Oh my God, ground and pound, it's all over. Wow.
Yeah.
Like if I hear one more fucking commentator just say wow, Joe Rogan said wow because Joe Rogan was blown away by that. And
Yeah.
wow was not something somebody would say in a broadcast, but Joe Rogan could say it because he was real, he was comfortable, he was in the moment. Now they say wow exactly the same way Joe Rogan said it.
Totally.
And one of the three commentators, two of which are just fighters who are saying the things they think all the other fighters are supposed to say, and one of them will go, wow. And it's like, what the fuck are we doing? This is
I've got a thought in my head now of if Joe Rogan's wow was something way more specific, like your bink. Like if someone got knocked out and three commentators all went, oh, bink, boot, bink.
Exactly. What somehow what you're supposed to notice when you start a podcast, if you guys just called it the, you know, casual experience, and then you opened it with like, all right, motherfuckers, we got the fleshlight, and you just like literally just imitated Joe. Wouldn't you feel like jackasses?
Yeah.
Something in sport, right? Something in sport, and it's not anyone's fault. I'm not mad at commentators or producers. It's just something in the cycle of sport, something in the language of sport. But what ends up happening now is people can just emulate that. So although you may know nothing about martial arts, if you're well-spoken, if you're a good host, if you got cool camera angles, you got an interesting voice, you can say, look, this guy's on putting pressure on the front foot. When he pivots out here, now notice right here, he'll move, and you can just emulate it.
Yeah.
That's not real, right?
No.
And we're not actually sort of doing anything. And so what's kind of happened, and this is where, whether this ever happens or not, these are my goals in life artistically for the things. It may never happen. People might just literally could listen to this and go, that guy's a fucking idiot. Why doesn't he just say, you know, how is this guy's grappling? How is this guy's boxing? How's this guy's thing? We're talking about the takedown defense and then predict who's going to win. Well, you know why I don't say that? Because all that's fucking horseshit. All of it's horseshit. All of it's horseshit that we created as tools to sell a product on TV and create engagement. And all of it's horseshit. If me and Bisping or me and Joe or me and Anik, and these are my friends, I'm certainly not like, if I sit with any of them on any desk anywhere, and Michael says, this guy's an amazing kickboxer, and I say, yeah, but this guy's an amazing jiu-jitsu guy, and then we have a conversation about if this guy keeps it standing and this guy puts it on the ground, and then he picks the striker and I pick the jiu-jitsu guy, both of us have fucking wasted everybody's time. We have wasted everybody's fucking time. Why are we doing this? It's been happened over and over, week after week after week for years. It's horseshit, right? Like, it's absolute horseshit. And now the way I started to look at it, at least frame it for myself, I could do, and you know, like I said, I thought 3 or 4 years ago when I started thinking this, I'm like, should I just do the horse shit? Like, should I just like go through the motions? I want to be working. But then that's when I realized if I do that, you can get a more handsome or more beautiful or whatever individual who's younger, more popular, was a former champion and has 1 million Instagram followers. They can do that. Right?
Yeah.
But what happened is as we all started doing it, we created a language. It's essentially astrology. It's not real, right? The way we're talking about fighting on television is not real. What I'm hoping to do is become an astronomer over 5 or 10 or 20 years and actually go into the real truth, not imitating somebody who came along 2 years ago and say, you know, this guy's using time, amazing timing, beautiful rhythm, you know, a gorgeous double leg takedown. It's just tools. Like, that's not saying anything. I'm hoping to really over time, and there'll be many others do it. There'll be many do it better than I sometime in the future, or now or whenever. But to actually go into the truth of it, because doesn't matter what commentators we sit at what desk, if they're just doing the things that we've always done, they're doing astrology. They're barely telling, you know, it's like, oh, rather than discussing what stars are there and how gravity works, they're saying, you know, this god of whatever did this, and if you were born in February, that means you like long hair or whatever, right? It's nonsense, right?
It's true.
It's nonsense. It really is. And we all just sit around and pretend it's true. Oh man, this guy's got knockout power in both hands.
Yeah, I mean,
power is not something you have. Energy is something you transfer. Hands do not have power. Hands are literally just 5-fingered bony thing. No, they don't. Your hands do not have power. You can channel energy from the ground through your body and out your knuckles, but your hands do not have power. Also, knockout. Also, a chin. This guy's got a crazy chin. That used to be slang for. There's 17 things all at play right now. Fitness, the strength of your neck, how hard that shot hit, how loose you are. Now we just say chin, and people think that's a fucking real thing.
Yeah. No. It's
You know
true.
what I mean?
That-
Same as
it
glass
is
jaw.
completely. Yeah, same with Glassjaw as well. That totally, Dustin. That's another thing. Oh, he gets knocked out real easy. Remember that they used to say that about Overeem all the time, and it's just that takes away from how good the other person was or the factors in the fight. You know, and it's true. I mean, I don't want to criticize anybody because I don't want to be here slagging anybody off. But there are times when I'll be watching maybe some promotions, and I will be like, the commentary is not like it's I don't want to be boring and say that I'm not enjoying it, because again, I'm not here to criticize people. I'm on a podcast here doing this, so I'm not the like definitive of it. But I agree with you. There are times that I'm like, I've heard all of this before, and it's not lazy, but
you're
simple.
You're not criticizing anybody, because it's not about the individuals. It's the system. It's the language, right?
Yeah.
It is not. It is not Daniel Cormier or like pick anyone. Doesn't matter. It's not their. It's quote fault. This is a language that developed in a bit of a vacuum and then stayed insular so long that everybody else started saying it. Oh man, we got to run this back. Oh, like just over and over the same language. And what happened is the machine that thought they were doing this to appeal to a quote casual audience, what they actually did was alienate the average audience, because they created this artificial language that's not real. Like I said, it isn't going to be fireworks. It doesn't have fight of the night potential. He doesn't have knockout power in both hands. Yes, he can take more of those leg kicks. No, those body shots are not necessarily going to all add up. The winner does not get a title shot. Like, this is all horseshit. It's all absolute horseshit. And, once you see that, there was actually a time about 2015. I was in St. Petersburg, 2014 maybe, and it was called the World Combat Games. And I commentated 18 different martial arts in 14 days. And it was fucking amazing. And sometimes 2 and 3 a day. I was the only color commentator. There were 3 play-by-play men. So I would go from one to the other to the other. The other 2 would take a break. I would go. I would be doing Muay Thai one moment, Sanda the next, Sumo later, Greco-Roman that afternoon. It was fucking incredible. Yeah, it was amazing. For like 18 days we did this.
Wow.
It was so phenomenal. And there was a period, and of course you were up late. There were times, you didn't eat, etc. You got a little punchy. And I remember this one day where we kind of realized that one thing my friend and I were commentating was not actually going out, but they said commentate it anyways. And I actually regret as I tell you this, but I did find out later, it was not broadcast to anybody. And we knew it, but it was still unprofessional. But he and I looked at each other and we made each other laugh. And all we did was use cliches for the whole thing. Right? So he would be like, oh my God, who wants it more? This one, the winner is going to get a title shot. This is knockout power in both hands. He can't handle too many more of those. And we made each other laugh for about an hour and 40 minutes. And it was fucking funny. And we it reinforced to both of us. His name's Corey Erdman. He's a boxing guy. And he's the same. He's when you're around it for too long, this guy's got 19 knockouts and 12 submissions. He can knock you out on the feet or he can submit you on the ground. This one's going to be fireworks. We just did that for an hour and 40 minutes. And I swear to you now, and again, it is not a judgment on whichever fighter is doing combat in the States, but it is that now.
Yeah,
it is literally, this guy's got an amazing this and phenomenal that, and absolutely, he's just got to take an opportunity to try to shoot in now if he gets his head up. Like, it's just that. And over time, the more it becomes like that, the less we learn, and the more we think we know that isn't true. And this is maybe, and now I'm getting you guys, there's something about your guys, the way your guys' voices are, or how agreeable you are, that's encouraging me, that's taking me way out into fucking left field here. I am also drinking a lot of iced coffee today, and I'm pacing. There's something about it not being on video where now I'm just pacing and thinking, but this is the exact same mechanism that created QAnon. It is the exact same mechanism.
Yeah,
it is taking things that are either sound bites or narratives or memes or half truths or slang, and then continuing to present it until you actually think that they're truthful. And then the world doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
it is completely that. Literally,
totally agree.
I'll have people send me something and they'll say, I don't understand what happened here. Does this, he hit him so hard. Does he just not have power, or does he have an incredible chin? And I'll look at the question. I'll be like, holy fuck, this guy thinks knockout power means knockout power. And this guy thinks chin is a measurable attribute. Holy fuck, this is QAnon, right? And people will, and of course they do. And it's not their fault. The machine, and it also, if I pause and I stop pacing and I put down the iced coffee and I take a deep breath, I realize this conversation that we're having, if we were having a conversation and you guys I was Thorin or somebody who works in video games, and you guys had a video game podcast, we'd be having a similar conversation. If this was a conversation about politics, we'd be having a similar conversation. There's something in the nature of media and the speed at which it's moving, and the fact that anybody, whether you've ever fought or done martial arts, and that you add Dunning-Kruger to it, where you like actually think the things you're saying are true, and you add confidence, and then you have an audience that starts to listen to it and they think it's true. And there's so many layers that when I say to somebody, hey, how when you're fighting a southpaw, you got to keep your front foot on the outside. That's absolute horseshit, right? And it is absolute horseshit. Absolute horseshit. But if you say that to somebody who watches, again, the least educated people in martial arts will be watching the most corporate mainstream stuff. If you say that to them, they'll be like, no, bro, everybody knows. Or you'll say, hey, you know how you can't move towards the power hand? Well, you totally can. They'll be like, bro, no, you can't. They will believe that they know. And if you examine the machine, why do they think that? Well, they heard it 27 times.
Well, yeah,
from 12 commentators.
It's like an echo chamber of the same.
But why? But why did the commentators say it? They said it because other commentators said it. They know fucking damn well that that's not true. They know damn well. Also, there is no such thing in wrestling as, quote, takedown defense. Doesn't exist. But Daniel Cormier or Dom, and these are the best of the best commentators, fighters, and brilliant martial artists. They will talk about it. They will talk about, even though in their lifetime, they know that they would never train a kid and say, okay, let's defend the takedown, because that isn't a thing. That is an objective. And you never approach something in combat with a singular objective. We're not just going to defend your takedown. We could punch you. We could tire you. We could fatigue you. We could stall you. We could reverse you. We could submit you. We could elbow you in the face. Like, we could do 1,000 things. But what we would never frame it with our athlete is, do this one thing that is a negative, like stop him from doing a thing he wants to do and do nothing else. That's not real, right? Like, that's not martial arts. That's not fighting. That's not wrestling. But they will still say it. Why would they say it? Because they know that that's the language. And they have busy lives, like interesting lives, training, families, traveling. This thing of going and sitting there in that suit and doing that thing is one of the 15 interesting things they're going to do that week. And then they got to go home. And some producer, if they started having this conversation about how takedown defense is not a thing, some producer would give them shit. They probably tried it once or twice. They got in shit, and then they never went to these things again. They just surrendered to this, and it's not their fault. It's the machine. It's the machine.
Totally agree with you, particularly with commentary and Will. Just generally, actually, I completely agree with all the points you made, particularly around echo chamber in politics, etc. But you can totally see that as well in the commentary when you have producers who will say, "Oh no, we can't do that." One that stands out, and I think Joe Rogan talked about it, was the fact that he was told you can't talk about Kevin Lee having staph going into the Tony Ferguson fight. You can't talk about it. Don't talk about it. And he just was like, well, no, I've got to talk about that. That's something we have to talk about. And as you say, it's the way it's structured is because they want, it's marketable, isn't it? It's sellable. You can make people watch. And I do think you do lose something, as you completely have rightly said. You lose something in the mix. And sometimes I just turn down the commentary sometimes, you know, when I watch fights.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it's, again, it's nobody's fault. But
no,
so we
totally
remove
not.
commentary and we look to other parts of it, whether it's the marketing or the storytelling or even the camera angles, the packages they build. When you believe, like, say, for example, one thing that nobody will be allowed to talk about, whether Megan or Joe or anybody, we're not supposed to talk about their losses, right? Now, you can believe some producer that has, or executive or whomever, that is always, that's been a thing. What we lose when you're formula executors is we lose the fact that the world changes, right? So, you know what's really interesting? If you grabbed 100 people who don't watch fighting, and you said, and I talked to family members about this. People are always like, hey, how's that fighting thing going? Oh, so I see you on Facebook, you got those fights. Yeah, so you doing some traveling? So this of course comes up in my regular language. If I talk to any of these people who relatives, friends who don't watch fighting, and I say, Rose Namajunas, she was the champion, but then like she lost and she cried and it was really terrifying. She talked about like how insecure the losing made her and how like anxious she was. Now that may come up today, so I'm not saying they would never talk about that. But the story of losing, failing, going back to work and trying to accomplish something, not only is interesting to people, but it's really important to society.
Yeah.
Like the world is full of people who will make fun of somebody for losing. What happens in their own mind is they think losing is so tragic that idiots like them will, and I don't mean to call somebody who's trapped in a cycle an idiot, but silly people like that will sit there and judge Nick Diaz, for fuck's sake, and call him a quitter or a loser. And when they do that, they're telling themselves that failing is so bad because people like them will mock someone that you should never try.
Yeah.
And it insulates them from trying. And so seeing this natural part of the process that you try and you fail, you give everything you have to something and you do not win, but that's okay because you learned and changed and grew and your life got better. Anthony Smith stood up and did not quit.
Yeah.
If he quit when John kneed him in the face, he would have won. And he'd be the champion.
Yeah, he'd be champion right now. Maybe
I'm
going to
pull. Yeah, maybe not right now. But I'm going to pull up. I'm going to invent a number that just is how it felt. But it felt like 40% of any engagement or interaction or discussion I saw about that were people saying that he was a bad person for not quitting, how he was harming his family, how he should have not stood up. And I fucking saw this for days.
Yeah.
And it concerned me and worried me. And I look at it and I'm like, that person has such a mutated view of the reality of what life is. And now that could be a 16-year-old and they haven't yet been exposed to it, but it could also be a 38-year-old looking at it and going, winning the title, getting more money, and then that is the responsibility you have to your family, which was kind of the way that some percentage of people viewed it. To which I look at it, it's like, Anthony can go home to his daughters and say, we don't lie, we don't cheat, we don't manipulate, doesn't matter how much money there is. And this is who we are, and this is how we live our life. Anthony Smith's life and his family's life is very likely massively better because he didn't stay down and pretend he was hurt.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm not accusing what's his name of that against Peter Yan.
Benjamin Sterling. I was about to say, it's interesting. Those same people would probably be the same people who went, Sterling was faking, but that was a pretty nasty knee.
You can't win.
Yeah, you can't win. You can't win. Exactly.
Yeah, you can't win. And let's just assume, because we can assume either way. We can just allot our own opinion. We can invent an opinion that we support however we like. But let's just decide to invent that he actually was badly injured and he could not continue. That Sterling was. Well, we'll start with that. Maybe we can look at the other side. His life is fucking worse because of that. He now has to deal with with thousands of people openly mocking. He had a dream of being the UFC champion. He is holding the belt.
Yeah.
But on paper, he is the UFC champion, and his life got way worse.
Yeah. That's
Right?
not the way he
Anthony
dreamt of winning, was it?
No,
You know, that's not the way he
never.
wanted to do it.
And Anthony Smith did not do that, although in this, Anthony Smith could continue. Perhaps Sterling couldn't. So it's a deeply, not even comparison. But Anthony's life is certainly better. He's a certainly happier person, more adjusted. Completely. So these artificial things we create, titles and money and all these things, these are not real. These are not, money's real. Yes, you need it for goods and services. If you want to live in a house, that may cost money, right? Like these are real things, but they are not a scoreboard for life. You know, we're trying to be the greatest in the world and coming up short and only being the 7th best fighter in your weight class ever. That is such a fucking monumental accomplishment.
Yeah, totally.
But a lot of the world will look at it and go, that guy's a loser. And when Nick Diaz, and this one, I sat with this for a long time trying to understand, the world. There was a lot, and again, it doesn't matter what other people think, and not being affected by the opinions of others is an incredible superpower, and I'm sure Nick Diaz has it, and by now I'm sure Sterling has developed it.
Yeah, I'd hope so, anyway.
But a large percentage, a very large amount of people called Nick Diaz a quitter. It's like, if you can't understand how hard you have to work throughout life, how many times you have to not quit in the harshest of circumstance, how much further you have to push than all other, not like the 99 to the infinite 9, a percentile, to get to a point that you could be fighting in a cage on national TV on a pay-per-view or whatever, and then get to a point where you cannot stand up, or you have to surrender, or you are out. Do you know how fucking hard of a life, how serious, like the definition of quitter is the other 100 million people who quit at every instant along that, including everybody who's calling him a quitter.
Yeah,
but if we don't see that,
completely, you don't see that.
If we don't see that, though, we are literally meandering in the dark through life. We have completely misunderstood life. And if we're 29 years old or 33 years old, our life is zipping us by while we're calling Nick Diaz a quitter, completely misunderstanding everything about what the potential of our life is.
Yeah,
and
completely.
It's a wild thing.
I think it's crazy. It's interesting you talk about the Nick Diaz one, because I remember the build up to that fight as well, because obviously it's so recently. And Nick is I think why people like the Diaz brothers so much is they're very open books about what's happening with them. And Nick himself in the build up was saying how, I remember him saying like he doesn't know who booked this, who put him against Robbie, and said like, whoever booked this I need to talk to, because this is crazy. The fact that he still went in there and fought against somebody who he felt like, oh my God, this guy, I'm going against a real contender here. It's still a victory there. And it kind of links to, not a downplay, because obviously it's a film, but it's an amazing film. And it's one of my favorite films. And I know it's a cliche to have it as a favorite film, but there's a reason why Rocky doesn't win in the first film. There's a reason why he loses, because that's a better story, right?
Yeah, it's incredible, right? Yeah, it's incredible. And I mean, and that was Best Picture that year, which is amazing.
It was.
Yeah, and it should have been. It's it's an incredible story, and it's a story that if we researched mythology and storytelling, I'm sure it existed 1,000 years ago in some way. But it's because we can relate to it. But right now, today, the way that we shape storytelling, the way that we contextualize the path, there are, if and when, like the greats lose, people can't we're so connected to outcomes and consequences and results and outcomes, and the real winners, like people who take risks and go on adventures and live life to the fullest, understand that the consequences and the results and the outcome are the least important, and that the whole process and the path and the journey and the learning and the trial and the error and the trying and failing and trying again, that's the point. But we fucked this up. We have kind of fucked this up from a modern sort of understanding of the world way. I've had people at different times say, somebody once, and this happened a few times in my life, where people are like, well, you were a failed fighter. It's like, I started fighting at 39 and my goal wasn't to be the champion. I fought 9 times.
Yeah.
Like, if you
a failure? I don't
see
know.
that, well, yeah, but they believe, but if you contextualize, and so let's not even use me, mine was so low. Let's take somebody, God, what is his name? James Vick, right? So we're gonna just, I was just searching in my mind. You know how fucking successful James Vick's fighting career is if you properly contextualize success. Yeah. Like, he started out as a guy doing karate. He made his way to the UFC. He knocked out big time people. He made a great living. He adventured around the world. He stood in cages, actually. And I love James Vick. And there's, I have this deep connection, Carlos Condit, to these particular types, Cub Swanson, these particular types of fighters. But Roxanne Modafferi, I'm going to pull her. She's my fucking favorite story.
I love her. She's amazing.
Dude, like, do you guys have your computer in front of you? Open up just Tapology or Wikipedia or something, and open up Roxanne. And what made me think of this?
I love her so much, man.
Yeah, me too. And so there's so many reasons, but so she was fighting in Madison Square Garden. Mm-hmm. I believe it might have been the first UFC ever in Madison Square Garden. I was there, and she got a shit beating. It was probably her worst performance, and it was against somebody really good. It was against somebody really good. And I remember, again, noticing it. And a lot of people, there are different times where I'm just like, well, I can't understand human nature, although I'm interested in it. And it's harmful to spend too much time on it. So I better move on from it. Then other times where I'll take a deep interest in it and be like, how could we influence people to see this different? I'm just looking here. Madison Square Garden.
It was Sajaya Eubanks.
Yeah.
And it was
Eubanks.
230, wasn't it, with DC?
Yes. Yeah. And so she kicked the shit out of Roxy.
Yeah.
And I remember noticing that a lot of sort of the results that Roxy took, and she doesn't care, right? She understands how the world works and how it doesn't work and stuff, to whatever degree any of us can, right? But I remember seeing that people were making fun of her and saying, "Oh, she's the worst. She's like the very." And I thought, if you just understood, and I used to call recall Japanese fights, 600 shows probably I've called, and you look back at some of these, Shudo. So, and we're talking May 6, 2006. And some of these old ones, by that point, she had moved to Japan at different times. And she's fighting the best fighters in the world. And she goes on this run where she gets beat up a lot.
Yeah.
Sarah Kaufman, Rosie Sexton, Akano, Barb Honchak, Hashi, Raquel Pennington. And do you know how hard it is to be and she was a regular person who loved martial arts and like, what's the name for Japanese animation?
Manga? Or anime.
Yeah, and manga and that kind of stuff. Anime and that kind of stuff, yeah. And so she moved and trained, and she didn't know how to fight. Yeah. And this woman, through, 12 years later, is fighting in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
This is literally the personification of dreaming, of having a dream, starting at zero, and then getting all the way there. And if you are looking at that and you think she's a loser, again, you've really, 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 like, something in the learning, something in the process of living has really poorly contextualized what this is, what we're doing here, what we can do. If you look at Roxanne, who started out as a white belt, fighting, no natural athletic ability, or very little by comparison to anyone. She would be the first person in the gym, the last person out of the gym. She mopped the floors. And people mopped the floors with her for years of her life. One day she's in Madison Square Garden, and yes, she lost. But to misunderstand that journey and that life, and now she lives as a professional fucking samurai in Las Vegas, selling T-shirts to people that love her, I'm wearing it. I wear her T-shirt. I was wearing it today. Happy Warrior. I wear her T-shirt all the time. She, like, literally, if you can't see that and go, oh my God, this is a dream life that somebody worked their ass off, you've been misled. And so
Yeah.
there are people who look, and if you can't be Michael Jordan, or if you can't be George St. Pierre, or you can't be the richest, you can't be Jay-Z, why even bother? Because you could end up Roxanne. And
Yeah.
that's a better life than, the result of dreaming, chasing, working, striving, failing, trying again, taking your lumps, pushing back, and ending up Roxanne Modafferi is such an incredible life to build from nothing.
Yeah.
But most people can't see that. They just can't and won't see that,
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's kind of weird having this conversation because I've got a competition in like a month for a jiu-jitsu competition. It's only a minor thing, and it's my first one at blue belt. And it's kind of weird because I put a lot of pressure to be like, I need to win. Like that's why I am a very competitive person. I have a love, and I channel a lot.
You're
of that
not
into
going to
martial
win.
Well, probably not. But,
so why even try?
Well, no, but I would say you're probably not going to win if you're obsessed with the result.
Yeah, but having this, hearing weirdly, it's like quite eye-opening to hear all this and your insight on that, because it's very true. Like it's the journey that gets you there rather than the product that you're making, and to enjoy it. And there is a part of me that always thinks about having the most exciting matches rather than the most like, oh, I've got to win, go for submissions.
But that's a objective as well. Like I lost a little more than I won in professional fighting, although after I sort of rounded a corner, I lost my first 2 fights, and then after that I won a little more than I lost, right? But and this is with humility and honesty. I even hate to say this. I would take, if I had one of my coaches, people that I worked with, what I believe they would say, and what I've heard them say is, Robin is so much better in the gym than he ever showed, except for maybe a fight or two, my last fight and one other one. And why is that? That's a performance thing. That's not an excuse. That's your fault. That's you. That is a performance issue, which is a you issue. It's not an excuse. It's a failing. It's a big failing. Yeah. And my main problem in retrospect, I was far better shape, moved far better then. But if I knew now what I know, then I would have understood that you should never be looking to win. The objective isn't to win.
Yeah.
The objective, you literally can sit down. And if you do this over the next few weeks, and really mean it, and think truthfully about it. You make 2 columns, and this idea was introduced to me originally by David Mullins, who's a sports psychology consultant, and what he does, and real sports psychology consultants, is so deep and nuanced. I don't want to misrepresent that me telling you this one thing is in any way me telling you sports psych, because that is its own thing. But this is a very strong beginning that he does. From here, I think it'll probably be up to you. But he does this with performance coaching, athletic coaching. But there are many different ways that people use this in life. And you'll make 2 columns, and one will say controllables, and one will say non-controllables. Controllables is, how hard do I work? Controllables is, how much sleep do I get? What do I eat? How prepared am I? How focused am I? What did I, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What can you control? And they're almost all to do with you. Non-controllables. And right at the top of non-controllables, you should write winning.
Yeah.
I cannot control winning.
Yeah.
I can control elite performance.
Yeah.
I can control the best performance of my life. I can control trying to stay out of my own way. I can control figuring out how to flow and what it takes for me to allow me to flow and not overthink. These are things I can develop, but winning is not a controllable, because if winning was a controllable, I could control the minds of 2 judges, 2 of the 3 judges there. I cannot, right? I could control the eyes of the person who's going to score you 4 points for taking the back or not score you. You will not control their eyes or mind or choice.
Yeah.
You can control the ability to allow yourself to have the highest level of performance possible. And if you remove the goal of winning, because it's absurd, and reinsert the goal of the best you could possibly be on the day at the moment, you increase your chance of winning.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. It's 100. Like, thank you for that. Honestly, it's a good way of opening up your mind, really, to the way that you can improve without, actually doing that much to improve it, but just your mindset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your how you position it, how you
Mm-hmm.
contextualize it. Yeah, I mean, the truth is that all you are doing is so. And you should look at what is the same and what is different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did before I fought. I had a lot of jiu-jitsu contests. I got bronze at the Pan Am Games. I won
Mm-hmm.
NAGA Worlds in New York once, actually, which was
Yeah.
in a intermediate senior division. But it was the best competitive day probably in my life outside of some MMA fights. But there are the things you cannot predict, right? So you don't know who you are on the day you compete in the jiu-jitsu tournament.
Mm-hmm.
You will know later that day who that guy is. You can change, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're looking for the optimal state of performance, but you don't know what that is. So
Mm-hmm.
what you can sort of do is emulate it. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have a couple of good partners that want to do this with you, especially if they're doing a tournament, maybe you'll all want to do this.
Yeah, no.
You bring a few people in who will actually stand there. You'll have your area, and they'll announce you, and they'll announce them, and they'll go through the things, and then you do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you recreate, because here's one of the main issues that you will naturally face, and so will everybody else there that's never competed. Novel experiences require a lot more of the mental capacity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anything new steals your attention, but if you know that, you can prepare for that. It's like, okay, you want to imagine, what does the mat feel like? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
step out into the mat. Okay, there it is. Oh, he said my name. Oh shit, my heart rate goes up. Okay, my heart rate goes up. That's a part of it. You want to start to see all of these things as normal. I remember it was maybe my 6th fight, and I was in Winnipeg, which is a city I grew up in, and I was backstage getting ready to fight. And on that show was a man named Joe Dirksen. And Joe Dirksen, I believe, was in his close to his 70th fight. Let's just say 67th for the hell of it, but it could have been 71, 72.
Jesus.
I don't know. Joe's been around. He fought in the WEC. He had 1 or 2 UFC fights too. Joe Dirksen, Doerksen. Joe's amazing. He's a pioneer in Canada. So guys like him, Pat Cote, and guys like that were like, the guys who pioneered it here for me and people like me. So Dirksen, I'm standing there and I turn to Joe and I'm like, man, like I feel a tingling in my hands. Like I don't feel like I have any strength in my hands. And he looks at me and goes, yeah, same here. Fight number 67. Yep, same thing every time. And I looked at him and I realized, okay, 2 things here. One, that it's weird that my hands feel like that. But you know what's worse is if it freaks me out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's no big deal to have tingly hands if you know that's a normal part of the experience.
Yeah.
This is a normal part of it's not okay to freak out about it. Oh my God, I'm not going to be able to fight. Oh, I can't hold anything. What if if you start doing that, now I've caused the problem. Tingly hands, no strength in your hand, feeling a little wobbly, whatever, any of these things, once you know they're normal, it becomes a part of the experience. It's no longer novel, and it's a little easier to process, right? All of these things are at play. But this, and again, back to how we make packages on Bellator or One or HBO Boxing, or how we may introduce it or commentate it or talk about it or present it or stories or do opens. All of these things are more interesting. This is all real life. And these all matter, because everything I just said to you about the tingling in your hands and novel experiences and trying to emulate the situation, all of that will work. All of that is 100% true for a job interview too. You're not going to get kicked in the face in a job interview, presumably, but it's all the same. It's all the same. We're now unlocking keys to performance in life if we talk about these things, right? But you'll do great. But just understand that almost anything you experience, understand it's probably quite normal. Anxiety, weird. You're gonna go pee like 11 times in the hour before. You will. I guarantee
he went to pee like 4 times before this podcast.
I did. I know it. I'm not even gonna lie. Hearing that you were coming on, I was like, "Oh my god! Oh my god!"
And you peed more, didn't you? Isn't that weird?
I did.
Well,
I did.
why is that normal? Because why is that not only normal, but good? Your body is involuntarily getting rid of anything it doesn't need. It's going to need all its energy for focus, for a jujitsu, to do a podcast. Your body's trying to minimize any outside thing. You're going to poo 3 times before you do your jujitsu tournament. You're going to pee a bunch of times. Certain systems of your body will naturally start to become less important as your body focuses energy on movement, muscles, attention. And these are the things that if you're thinking about them or experiencing them or present, I shouldn't say thinking, I should say present. When you go to do this jiu-jitsu tournament, if you're present, curiously present, and you're like, man, I feel alive and I'm nervous.
Yeah.
But then you follow that up with, I'm pretty sure this is all normal. You know why? Because I'm doing something that matters to me. I'm doing something that I don't know about. I'm taking risks most people don't take. Oh my God, I'm fucking alive, right?
Yeah.
And then these are all great things. And now you're going into a contest the way you should. You know what? None of that has to do with, oh my God, I need to win. Winning is a consequence of many great processes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's not even a goal, really. Yeah. Of course you want to win. Everybody wants to win. We do want to win. It's not that we don't want to win, but it's not the goal because it's not an achievable goal. But it is an achievable outcome if we achieve our goal of optimal performance and our best day. And so that becomes the goal.
Yeah.
That's good advice. I guess our mums are always right, yeah? Just try your best. That was
Yeah. You know, here it took me like 8 minutes or 11 minutes to get around it. And really, if we go back, Mom had it right.
Mom had it right.
We'll get my mum on next week. Thank you very much for I mean, the episode will be a little more bland, a little shorter, but
it won't be it's not as an insightful way of saying it. It is true though. It's
true.
It is true. Like,
there's a lot of these things. Be yourself. Be yourself. Yeah. That's a fucking huge one. It's a huge one. Moms say that all the time. They're 100% right. If you start trying to emulate, you know, whether you're emulating Joe Rogan on your first podcast, or you're emulating, you know, Jay-Z and you want to be a rapper, or you're emulating your high school teacher, or, you know, you got to defend yourself in court and you emulate the guy that you watched on, you know. But if you be yourself, you're going to be more interesting. You're going to be better. You're going to be more relaxed. My very favorite saying, as it relates, fighting is a good one, and a jiu-jitsu tournament too, but so is, you know, a lot of things. The idea of the moment of truth. I just love that saying.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's no bullshit now. Like, I'm standing here in my underpants and I'm going to fight this guy on TV in a cage. Like, there's no lying. This is the absolute moment of truth. Am I ready? Do I have my shit together? Am I focused? You know, did I work hard? Like, who am I? Am I courageous today? Like, and like, who am I? This is the moment of truth. There's going to be no bullshitting here. Like, I love that saying. I love that saying.
I have to say, Robin, you've made me a little bit nervous a few times on this podcast with some of the stuff you've said. I find myself at work, when I'm coaching, when I'm holding pads specifically, always saying bink, like instead, like when I'm telling people to breathe and they're hitting the pads, I'm saying bink, 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 bink. It must be because of you, and I'm just really hoping that I'm not going to get sued. Like, I don't owe anyone any money. I don't know how many times I've said it. I couldn't possibly count.
This is a recorded thing, so you have this recording, but I will grant you lifetime use of bink until you make, you know, excessive 50,000 pounds of it, and then I will send you a cease and desist, or I'll want to cut. But as long as you've got up to 50,000 pounds, the truth is, like, I'm never going to tell anyone not to use bink. I just think it's really cool that I have a piece of paper that, and enjoy the hostilities. Like, I just said that one
that's
day,
a good one.
And my wife was like, "Where'd you get that?" And I said, "I don't know. I just said it." She goes, "Oh, you should definitely say that more." And then I did.
I'm going to put officially authorized binker in my Instagram bio.
Yeah.
I've always liked that. Enjoyed the hostilities. I've always liked that.
Yeah, there's something, you know, what's really weird about it is, like, over time, it started to mean different things to me. Like, these are all just words. It's not magic words. It's not special. It's just you know, my friends at the end, that makes it 5 words. They're just words, right? But you take any words, will change their meaning as you change your connection to them. Now, enjoy the hostilities, my friends, will be like, to me, you should meditate, enjoy the hostilities. You wouldn't it be great if we could be kinder to people, enjoy the hostilities? That sounds weird, but the hostilities are internal, hard work, the emotional labor of trying to change. To me, now that's what that kind of means. Like, it isn't just, hey man, fighting's going to be great, make sure you love this fight. And it does mean that too, but now it kind of means, to me at least, the hostilities of sort of emotional labor of change or learning or growth or like lessons, which is weird. It just, over time, it kind of started to mean that. But words are like that. Words change the meaning. We all understand words differently. Jab doesn't mean, whatever the Chinese word for jab is not a translation of jab. It is a word that represents that motion. And that motion could be viewed differently to somebody in China or Russia or Brazil or Cleveland or wherever, right? Words are not literal translations. They're just sounds that we use to do our best to get across an idea. The real and words have become a big sort of love of mine and a part of my life, as how, if my goal is to understand martial arts, and then my next goal is to try to find a way to make it make sense to somebody or be entertaining or mean something to them, that's about words, right? It's about language. And you start to get really strange thought, like sort of connection to words. If you think about, we think in an abstract way, if somebody heard us talking about quote words, they would think words are the things you use to explain your thoughts. That's not true. Your thoughts are formed using the only words you have. Words limit your thinking, right? The smaller your vocabulary and the less ways you can use to the less language you have about the same thing, whether, like, you'll notice a real chef will have thousands of ways to talk about the same dish. Right? Now, unfortunately, when you put it on the Food Network, they'll all say the same thing. And that's that same problem. Suddenly the audience at home will be like, oh, the texture is amazing. I get notes of sugar when I bite this. And oh, the bacon covered in chocolate. Now we've got the savory with the sugar, right? But really, if you, and cut, and you let those two chefs talk, they would have thousands of ways to say it. So there's something in the language here, because if I ask you guys to imagine something right now, a concept, any concept in your mind, but don't use words, go.
Oh.
Right?
You just vocalized my feeling, Ian, perfectly. I was like, oh, in my head.
Right? Isn't that weird though? And then it hits you. You're like, oh my God. I can only think based on the language that I have access to or any relationship with, and whatever language I have a relationship with or my understanding of it is shaping my thinking. All of a sudden you're like, oh shit, this is a lot bigger than striker versus grappler. This ability to think, to reason, to connect to people, to be empathetic, or to learn, or to show emotion. These things are all deeply related to language. So if we're all repeating striker versus grappler, or whatever the thing is in Brexit or whatever, we are. And why are 40% of people fighting with the other 40% in many countries in the world, where they only have the two limited language ways to look at it, and they both are sure they're right? Whereas if you take somebody from somewhere else who speaks different languages or has different words or isn't indoctrinated with particular lines of thinking, particular language, they'll look at it and go, oh, these guys are fighting because both of them have been indoctrinated with very simplified ways of seeing the world. Right? And they will not think either one is right. But if you talk to either of the two, they'll be sure they are correct and the other one is crazy. Right? But all of these, this is language, right? This is why this conversation matters. It doesn't matter if somebody says, knockout power in both hands. That's not going to hurt anybody. But this very mechanism created QAnon. This very mechanism creates, there are hundreds of thousands of people dead or injured in Myanmar because of they didn't understand how, information can be manipulated on Facebook because it's and I do not say this jokingly. I say this as a way to say it. If you've ever seen Elf, the movie Elf, when he gets to New York and he's like, "Oh my God, the world's greatest cup of coffee," and he freaks out. He can't believe it's the fucking world's greatest cup of coffee. Where clearly it isn't. It's an ad. Exactly. So, and why is that brilliant? The whole point is that we get immune to advertising, but if you've never seen it, or misinformation or manipulation or repetition, but if you'd never seen it, you'd be like, "Oh my God, congratulations, you did it." Right? In Myanmar, they had never been exposed to this, and all of a sudden there were these powerful messages being shared in about how somebody else is evil and trying to kill your family, and then people were killed about it, right? These are massive issues that we can see if we turn on ESPN and watch the NFL or UFC or whatever, or we watch the Academy Awards or whatever. We can see these things, but they don't matter that much. But they certainly do matter in the grand scope of the world. So much the way that we do by watching fighting, we can learn about philosophy. We can also learn about communication. We can learn about getting along. We can learn about learning. We can learn about changing yourself and positively influencing others. Like, it's all connected, right? Like the world is universally all connected. It isn't just, cool, Blachowicz is fighting Glover Teixeira. Glover's 42 years old. Is he going to be able to do it at this age? I don't know. Discuss. Well, against John Jones, and we just start going off on this fucking nonsense. Like, it seems weird now. It'll be a lot weirder. Right now I sound like a weirdo, like, discussing these things, and a large percentage of people would hear me say this and think I'm a bit of a lunatic, right? But in 2 years, this will be a very normal conversation. Like, I'm not the only person out there going, wait a second, we're all repeating the same things. Like, if I hear somebody else say, well, we'll see how it all plays out when we're talking about a fucking fight. Dana says that. You don't have to say that. Well, we'll see how it all plays out. Like, maybe we'll run it back. He said that. You don't have to say that. You could say anything else, but by repeating that, your thoughts are being at the very least put into a box, right? And so these are the weird things you learn by fucking doing breakdowns of people doing jujitsu, right? Like, but truthfully,
that's full circle. That is really good way round.
Yeah, it's true though. It's true. And I'm not claiming to be a master at anything. I've only studied martial arts for about 43 years. And I don't say that facetious. It's a very short amount of time. It's a very short amount of time. One very short lifetime. And so I've only gotten, a little ways. Like, I've only been able to learn a certain amount. If I were to live for 30 more years, I would know much more than I know today. And I would think a lot of my ideas are super limited or completely incorrect. But that is the path, searching for mastery. And if you walk this path, playing guitar or grooming dogs or knitting shawls, it doesn't matter. I have a feeling this is kind of learning these things, or at least thinking about these things, or having different perspectives about the world, is a part of that path. And I mean, some people spend their whole life cutting bonsai trees. They're not doing it to be good at cutting bonsai trees. They're doing it to get to a point of understanding the world, or seeing the world in a different way. And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to do now. Having said that, if I fly to Biloxi and I commentate bare knuckle MMA, that day it'll be about gashing up somebody's face with the knuckles of your bald fist, right? But it's all just, I just kind of feel like our lives are supposed to be about more than just the thing that we do. Even if the thing we do is something we deeply love and are passionate about, there's got to be some purpose beyond just the thing that's right in front of us.
Yeah. I think that's amazing. Like, I genuinely, it's been a really insightful talk, if I'm honest with you, Robin. Like, it's meant a lot to hear all of this, and I think it's actually really helped to it really has. I mean, it's been really interesting to not only understand where you come from in these analysis, but also where people can come into them and understand it better themselves, like looking at these things just a little bit more. I mean, I'm sure you felt like that as well, Dustin. I mean, I'm speaking for you, man.
I'm in such a weird headspace right now. Like, I don't know why I'm here or what I should be doing. Like, am I making good choices, Robin? I don't know. Like, I feel so bizarre.
You know what I will tell you is if you're asking yourself that, you're further along than 90% of people.
I really thought that was going to go a different way. I thought you were going to say if you're asking yourself, then probably no.
yeah. No. It's the
so
question
glad.
is the point. The answer, who the fuck knows the answer? I don't know if you're making good choices, and neither do you, and you never really will. But the fact that you're asking is the point.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
The fact that you're asking is the point, and it opens up. Man, this is a long trip. Like you start going down these things where you're looking at the macro of things, and then later at the micro, and how do things change, and how the cycles of martial arts compared to fashion, compared to thinking, compared to politics, what it is, all these things in different layers. You can go crazy. Yeah, you can go a little crazy.
Yeah.
That's part of the path, right?
Yeah,
you can. But most people don't, a lot of us don't want to ask a lot of these questions because a lot of times the answer is, I don't fucking know. And that's not the comfortable, normal thing that humans are looking for. And one of the most, and I'll leave this with you, it's connected to this, but one of the most powerful things that sort of shaped me or helped me kind of be enjoying kind of the path and this whole trip, and kind of get to a point where I'm feeling like really excited about, the next 5 years and 10 years. Part of that was getting to this idea that I don't want to form an opinion, right? Like not just like my opinion isn't important or I'm going to be open to having my opinion changed, but actually resisting the very fragile human urge to form an opinion or draw a conclusion. Of course, I'm sure I've done it thousands of times in this conversation, but the desire, the ongoing practice of trying to reject my own opinion. The longer you can live, they call it, what is it called? There's a name for this sort of state, and Einstein lived in it. Negative capability, it's called. Negative capability, the ability to resist drawing a conclusion or forming an opinion for as long as humanly possible. Einstein lived in that state for 3 years to develop the theory of relativity. It prevents you from being drawn into thinking you know, and then keep asking more and more. Keep reminding yourself you do not know. I do not know how martial arts works. And so I need to ask another question. If I think, pressure fighters do this, and the answer to that is this guy pivots out this way and he circles there, but if instead he should, that's all fucking horseshit, right? Now I'm inventing stuff, I'm projecting things. Even if that's true right at this minute, it will be untrue in a week or a month or a year when people change the way they approach it, right? So it's an ever-changing thing. So why would we form permanent opinions, permanent permanent conclusions in a world that is ever changing? It's illogical. And the more you can practice that, at first the world becomes a scary, unyielding, terrifying place. But then over time you start to realize, oh shit, the world has always been this way, whether I knew it or not. When COVID hit, people, I said this all the time. I'm like, we just discovered that the world is unpredictable. And so a lot of people are scared. But the truth is the world was unpredictable 16 weeks ago or 2 years ago. You just didn't know it and you lived just fine. Right? The world's always been unpredictable. The world's always been irrational. You live just fine in an irrational world. Exactly. So nothing has changed except for the way you view it, right? But so this is awesome. I am not high, by the way. I am not high.
Come on.
In case, like
what was in the coffee, Robin?
I did consume a lot of caffeine today, and I had an amazing workout, an incredible training today. And sometimes that helps. But I am not. Marijuana is legal in Canada, but. Yes, I'm pacing in my underpants. I've been pacing this entire time. There's something about the audio nature of this and not sitting, pacing, and it allows a randomness of thought. And it's something in your guys' nature too. You guys have kind of welcomed it or encouraged it, or just something in your nature. But you guys are very good at sort of enabling this line of thought.
Well, I'm glad that we have, man. Like I honestly like. We enjoy having people on to do this, and we've had, you're our third guest now, and I'm like excited that you are our third
guest.
Third, right, Dustin? It is our third, right?
Fourth.
Fourth. See, this is why we do post-production as we do this.
I was going to say, Robin, that was a lovely compliment you gave us, but you said it almost as if we have some kind of plan, or so, we have something in place.
No, but that's part of why. Also, there's you guys said some very kind things at the beginning about being, but truthfully, you're excited to sit and chat with me.
Yeah.
And that alone is real, right? Don't ever let that go away. And what I'm about to say, I'm sure, like if you went to broadcasting school, they would like butcher this sentence I'm going to tell you. But don't ever overplan, because there's something about this nature of being able to chat with two interesting guys from two different areas of England, and with a sense of humor that are laid back. And don't ever overplan it, because this has been really comfortable. Like this has been a really welcoming, open. Even the way you guys laugh is welcoming.
Well, I've been working on my laugh since I was young. So
we'll take our lack of preparing for podcasts as a compliment then, because we always not over-prepare. We always think. I think the best way we've always approached it, and I hope it's come out like that for you, is that we always want to start with something, couple of questions, but maybe allow you or whoever we have on to control the conversation in a way so that we flow with you. We're here to hear where you're going, so and to encourage that. So this is exactly the kind of thing we love, and we hope the listeners enjoy it too. We're still growing, but we really appreciate you coming on, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, Robin. Honestly, we appreciate you being here. And if you'd ever want to come on again, we'd love that as well. But I know.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it in like 6 or 8 weeks. But and this, this is if you find a minute or 45 seconds or a minute and 15 seconds that's somehow really interesting on its own, clip it and put a little, picture or a video of sometimes there's like a little sort of audio track visual you can throw over top. If you make one of those, I'll share it.
Awesome.
If you make one or two of those, I'll share it, and hopefully that'll get people listening to your podcast.
Lovely, will do.
Awesome. Well,
fantastic.
I guess that's a good way to say thank you, and thanks to the listeners as well. I guess if we're all
thanks, Steve.
Ready. Yeah, and Steve. Cheers, Steve.
Next one's going to be fireworks, Steve, just for you.
Yeah. And just thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Rob.
I was going to say earlier today, I was talking for real with George St. Pierre, and that guy loves dinosaurs.
I hope you did, because I actually love GSP. He's like my hero in terms of martial arts, and he does love dinosaurs.
He does. He does.
Snorted my
water. So I really did talk to George today, and he is a good friend. And if you guys get to 49 podcasts, I will go to George and say, George, please, can you do 20 minutes with my friends on their podcast?
Don't say that.
Don't do that. Right, Dustin,
I'm serious.
The next 50 days, we're not doing anything else but podcasts.
Just churning out absolute garbage episodes.
With anyone who wants to come on.
Now your mom is coming on later today.
That's gonna be a short
neighbor. Then the neighbor, and yep.
Oh man,
no, I'm serious. As you approach it, when you get to, hopefully I'll be on at number 30 or something. I'll join you guys again.
Honestly.
But as we get into 43 and 45, you just let me know, and I will 100%. I'll be like, look, George, please do it. And he's a great guy. He's just as good a dude as you think he is, or you see him on TV. He's just like that. And I'll be like, look, man, I hate to bother you. These guys are really cool, and they would love it, and they'll go crazy. Can you give them 20 minutes? It's audio only. You can do it from your bathtub, and he'll do it. I can't speak for him, but I have a feeling he would do it. Yes.
Oh man, you have no idea how much that means. I have GSP T-shirts. I love that guy.
He's his favorite guy, mate. As if we wouldn't be nervous enough knowing that George St. Pierre was potentially in his bath.
So George has his own gym. He has his own gym, and I've trained there with him. He when he was getting ready to fight Bisping, he brings guys in to train, and I got to train with him. It was Point Karate Day, and he has not only a bath, but he has one of those baths that moves so you can swim in it.
Yeah, I've seen that. Big tub.
And you can swim in it. And I'm sure because he's rich, right? I'm sure he has waterproof headphones. Maybe he can
Oh my
swim
God.
and
Wow.
touch.
At what point do you stop calling it a bath? That's not a bath. Like,
Yeah, you're right. No, you're correct.
where do we even buy that?
No, you're 100% correct. If we're discussing the using language properly and exploring different, I mean, if you were a water specialist, actually, sorry, this is way off topic, and we are going to say bye. But I do know the guy. I spoke with the guy who designs those moving giant water fountains in Las Vegas and all over. And man, you start to get into a conversation with a guy who's mastered that. He literally discusses it as if he is training water. And then when he's talking to you about it, you're like, oh shit, he is training water. It isn't a metaphor. He's literally lining up like H2O atoms in such a way, like it's wild shit. But yeah, anybody who's a deep specialist in anything, it gets into some pretty freaky shit. That's the nature of trying to, hyper specialize, right?
I totally understand that. That's something I talk to my partner about often. I am happy to watch anyone do anything if they're a master of the thing that they're doing. Like to know that you're
100%.
watching the absolute like top tier human potential of that thing that they're doing. I'm more than happy to sit and watch that regardless.
Just anything of what it. Yeah, I agree, man.
Yeah. Why the hell would any of us watch the Olympics otherwise? Like that guy's just throwing a spear. Like, he's just running up and he's throwing a spear. Like, why do I care? But then suddenly when you realize nobody in human history has thrown a spear like this guy, you're like, oh man, look at this, right? So it's true. It's true. Greatness is amazing.
Yeah.
It is.
I'm watching it.
Yeah.
What a great way to close up. That's a really lovely way to end it, That's great, guys. Honestly, thank you so much, Robin.
Robin, what should the people look out for? What have you got going on? Where can they find you?
Man, I think there's going to be a Karate Combat season 4, and I'm working on doing that. I'm doing some stuff with Glory.
Nice.
Jorge Masvidal show, Gamebred.
Yeah.
There's a lot. And it's something new every week. I'm doing some bare knuckle stuff. I go to London periodically to do BKB, which is at the O2 Arena. So when I'm there, you guys can buy the beer.
Oh, honestly, we will hit you up when you're there. Let us know, and we'll be there.
London is far, but I will come to London. If you're in London and the offer is there, I'm coming. I'll be on the train.
Thanks, Dust. You don't come to London for me, but okay.
Shut up, Ian. I don't care about you. You're always there.
You're always there. I'm so grateful. Like honestly, there's more stuff every week. Like and that won't always be true. Like they'll at some point a year from now there'll be a lot less work or something will change. But right now, I have to say no to things. I've never experienced that because I can accomplish a lot of work in a 13, 14-hour day, 6 days a week, constantly living deep in this. But I have to turn down work all the time now, which is weird. But it's just, my Instagram, I got stuff up there all the time. And I'm going to Paris, going to Amsterdam again in a few weeks for Levels Fight League, and then Paris for Aries Fighting Championship.
Wow.
And then, I got Karate Combat and Glory, and I do a bunch of Bellator stuff ongoing. I talked to George today for a TSN piece I'm doing on Glover Teixeira at 42. It just keeps going. And for me, now the fact that I have, and I'm always trying to find other things, right? Lethwei or Dambe, which is a Nigerian fighting art where they wrap their hands in rope. Like I'm trying to analyze as many variations as possible, because that's how you start to really understand martial arts, not just sports, television sport, right? But I'm grateful and I'm thankful, and it was actually really cool hanging out with you guys to be able to talk sort of completely outside the paradigm, completely outside this artificial box that we're often stuck in. It was a real pleasure, and I really enjoyed it.
I'm glad. I'm really glad.
Thanks. That. Thank you.
Well, and I hope the listeners enjoy
until
it
next,
too. Yeah. Until next time.
I'm signing off, and until next time, enjoy the hostilities, my friends.
Perfect.
Perfect.
I'm allowed to say that. He said I'm allowed. Big.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Combat Casuals podcast.
To get involved with the Ultimate Fighting conversation, email us at combatcasuals@outlook.com.
We can answer your questions in our next podcast.
Or maybe even have you on the show.
Be sure to follow, subscribe, Leave us a review or support us however you can.
Thank you to Me Against the World for our theme music.
Catch you next time.